Hello again, and welcome to another edition of Values Control from the Gray Falcon. And today we're going to do the Kansas mask mandate study and get into the values and control that are manifested through the message that's applied here. Now, if you look at this subject and you look up and you type in KU study masks and mask mandates, you'll see dozens of stories stating that the study proves that mask mandates, not mask mandates. And let's be clear, what a mask mandate means is that the city government forces the private businesses to require you to have masks on. That's all it means. It's a mask mandate is not a measurement of how many people wear masks. It's a statement that companies are required to make you wear a mask when you come in the store. Okay, so there's also problems with that, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But the expert class has clearly seen that many of us are not wanting to play ball, so they've gone into this type of community. This is communications, not science. There's no science involved in this. They're not measuring the effectiveness of the masks. What they're doing is they're comparing statistics between different populations. Anyone can do that. You don't need to be a scientist to measure whether or not one set of figures is bigger than another set of figures. So when they say that KU did a study, I mean, what do you need a scientist to measure PCR test positives? You don't. It's a scam. It's a testimonial. That's already, like, in marketing, it's something that we would do. We would get somebody famous or get someone with credibility to say something that anybody else could say, but it's supposed to mean something more because KU, quote, scientists counted up the same figures you and I can figure. So, basically what they're holding, I look at the CDC report, and basically to summarize, it said that since July 3rd, there are 105 counties in Kansas. 24 of them stayed with the governor's mask mandate on July 3rd. 81 of them opted out. Now, they don't tell you the size of the counties. They don't tell you anything about the counties. They don't tell you comparing the level of testing. They don't tell you the test percentages of these places. They just say that there are 81 counties that opted out. Now, already your mind is creating, if you know anything about the political directions of this, in all likelihood your Republican counties and your more rural counties are not going to have them. At the time of the mask mandate, I'm looking here, and they didn't have high rates of infection. They just didn't see that there was a problem, and I don't know what level of testing they were doing at the time because they never tell you. But the bottom line is, on July 3rd, they decided they didn't need it. And so what you see here is a bunch of people. There was a news story where a woman said there was a 50% decrease in transmission from the mask mandate counties, and they picked a 2-week period from July 3rd to July 17th. I don't really see. I'm looking at it here. It looks like the level of infections are higher on July 17th and July 3rd. So what they're doing is they're comparing rates of increase. And it's important to understand that this is not what they're claiming. They're using a word game. If one county has, let's say, I'm looking here and I can't tell exactly, but it looks like I'm looking at Ian Miller's post where he's deconstructing this. It looks like that the average daily infection for the places with mask mandates was 100, and it looks like the ones for the 81 that did not have mask mandates were well under 50. So if you have one place that has a high population and a higher incidence and a higher level of infection, and you have another place that has a low level of infection, what you know is, one, in all likelihood, the the pandemic, or whatever they call it, is going to hit a high density place first. So what does that mean? One, it means that it's spreading and the levels are going to be much higher in these bigger, larger places before it hits rural America. And two, as the process goes on, there are more and more people in the lower density places that are already going to be they were already going to be immune, who are already going to test. Although we don't know if testing negative, we don't even know if testing negative actually correlates with immunity, because the PCR test does not measure whether or not you have B cell memory. It doesn't measure whether or not you have antibody defenses. It measures whether or not there's the RNA that appears to be connected to the coronavirus. They're not measuring the virus anyway. So that's a whole nother story. But assuming that these, looking at the basis of these tests, and Ian Miller, let's take Ian Miller's own words. Ian Miller said, so here's a thread on the sleight of hand that the CDC pulled with their Kansas mass study. He has study in parentheses, quotation marks. Mass mandate counties are in black, no masks are in orange. Cases in the mass counties were always higher than in the non-mass counties. And what you see here is something very interesting. It seems like a few weeks after the July 3rd period, the Kansas mask counties have a huge spike. I mean, a massive spike. Somewhere like it looks like again, it's like 3 or 4 weeks into it, and it's looking like 3 or 4 times higher than the mask mandate places, and then it starts to come down a little bit. So, whereas there's a steady, smooth increase with the places that don't have masks. But you're talking about comparing 81 places, 81 counties that are most likely, on average, smaller than the 24 with mask mandates. Completely different populations. Also, it's not scientific, because to suggest that even if their claim that the mask mandates, that these places are really seeing legitimately lower rates of transmission, which, if you look at this graph, that's not what is really showing. It's showing that the places with masks mandates still have more infections than the places without mask mandates. Now, the story that came out on October 27th was comparing them per capita. And that's a more viable comparison. And you see, they're still pretty close. It's not like there's a dramatic difference. Both the places with masks and places without masks have an increase in per capita cases. So even if you're assuming that comparison is even a fair one, which it's not, because you're comparing places where the virus may be hitting at a different time. You're comparing a place where, when you see an increase in a small place, it's going to show up more. It's going to be more pressing. It's going to be more comparatively impactful, because a place that has 14 cases and then they have 19 cases, that's, well over 100% increase. You're talking about close to 133% increase. A place with 400 cases that goes to 623 cases, well, they're having a higher case increase, but the percentage increase is less. So they're playing a word game and a mind game with people who don't necessarily pay attention to things beyond, well, this expert said that. But